So I suppose I'm here today as part of the steering group with Design Declares Ireland, and myself and Brian and our other steerers who aren't here with us today. They couldn't make it. I suppose I'm here first of all to talk about the thing that you all hopefully have in your hand, which is the Design Declares Playbook. And I suppose I really wanted to just give a little bit of background as to not only what it is, but why we kind of created a piece like this, and then what we kind of hoped for or intended for it to kind of do, or the role for it to play. The first thing really was conversation that started on the steering panel, and it was really around the toolkit, which anybody that has signed up and declared would be familiar with. So there's lots of tools around the 8 acts that all sit as part of the you get access to on our website. But I suppose oftentimes the question that we had, and we heard from the likes of events like this and from various kind of community members, was, yeah, that's great, but can you show me how somebody used it? When did you use that? How did that work out for you? All those kind of questions. And really people want to, I think it's all well and good kind of handing people lots of tools. And we all know, we all go to, we're only chatting about Lisa doing DIY, and it's like you go to YouTube and you look up a video, you see somebody else doing it. You want to learn by example. You want to see where other people are kind of, doing those things. And we had published some of these articles through 100 Archive with Lara and various kind of places. But we kind of decided that one of the things that we wanted to have was something that maybe was a little bit more tangible, or people could possibly have it sitting on their desks, kind of refer back to it from time to time, and actually create a physical thing. Because, it was a question, I suppose, that we asked ourselves, was like, well, should we be printing something? Should we be making a physical thing? We're supposed to be, this is supposed to be the age where everything kind of sits digitally, and, you don't have to print anything anymore, and paper has a carbon footprint and all those kind of things. So I suppose the first real design decision within this was, do you physically create something? And sometimes not making something can be a design decision. And really, I suppose that brought up the first, part of the brief really with this was kind of creating something with intention and deciding that, well, if we're gonna make something, well, let's do it in such a way that it's in a format or an object which we can kind of make sure that people will want to hold on to. So it's going to be, small. It's going to be easy to kind of keep on your desk. The information obviously within that has got to be really, really tight. So, people are going to want to read it, want to kind of pass it on to colleagues, all those kinds of things. So I think, sometimes it's really just those kind of asking those questions around, well, how do we make sure that this thing that we create has kind of lasting power? How do we make sure that it becomes something that people will hold on to and pass? So I suppose that was the first kind of part of the brief. The second part really was collating all the information from this. We had lots of input from various kind of volunteers and people who write stuff as part of Design Declares, like that Lara and the team on the 100 Archive. Brian works with the social media team. They create lots of content. So we had a kind of a good bank of kind of work there. But we worked with Michelle O'Connor, who is she works in kind of content development, those sort of things, but she collated all the information that came into that was put together within this. So that was kind of pulling everything together. I think the other piece from that then was really just in terms of the actual production of the thing. So, what designer doesn't love getting an opportunity to create a piece of print? But, we looked at things like, should this be something like, we saw actually there was an example, the guys in the UK created something similar where they took the 8 acts and they created one with the newspaper club. I don't know if anyone's ever come across the newspaper club. Really kind of cool business in the UK, and they produce these newspapers, but you can do them for kind of anything. But we kind of decided it felt a little bit throwaway in a way, and yesterday's news and all that sort of stuff. And we just felt that this was maybe a little bit, something that had a little bit more lasting power in a way. So yeah, I suppose that's ultimately how we came to kind of creating this this format. Everything that we used within the actual book itself is, I suppose, as sustainable as we could possibly make it. There's two versions. I've got the black cover, which was from the second print run. The first one we had was this kind of grey board that we used. But essentially the whole idea here was, can we create something that at the end of its life, it can be taken apart easily. We kind of minimize the amount of plastics that we use. So there's no kind of glossy laminates, foils, all those kind of sexy things that designers love to do on pieces of print. We said we'd forego all of those, even right down to the binding. You know, it's stitching that can be taken apart, and all the components, I suppose, are easily recycled. So I suppose that journey really is kind of starting with, you know, what is it? Should I be doing this in the first place? If I'm going to do it, I'm kind of doing it in a very intentional kind of way. Does the actual format or the content of the thing mean that it has life beyond its immediate use? So it's not just a kind of a one-time throw it away. Okay, so maybe people are going to reflect on it. You know, we did things like, you see the back page, there's a pass it on, just trying to get people to, really use it, share it with people, all those kinds of things. And then really understanding that this object, whatever it is that we create, this is a piece of print in this case, but that it does have an end of life, and that when it comes to that, ultimately that it can be taken apart, it can be stripped down and at least recycled responsibly, rather than chucking it into landfill or having lots of nasties within it that mean it's going to leach into the soil and all those kinds of things when it is actually used. This was a funny picture actually I took. I was at the Design Leaders Conference earlier in the year, and the one on the left-hand side, I just thought, it's in the dustbin. And I suppose ultimately, like, you know, you can kind of be like talking about these things and, you know, get into the detail around the design of them. That is where they end up a lot of the times. And we all need to know that. And however beautifully or amazing kind of design work that goes into it, or the thought of the process, it's understanding that these things have a lifespan. So it was just a little bit of a grounding kind of piece for me, I thought. But look, we've had good success with it since the launch. Last year at Crew, we shared it at the 100 Archive event. I know that some of the IDI student events, the graduate awards, last year it was shared. So we're just trying to really have it as a piece that, again, it's just sharing the message, and hopefully it becomes a tool that people can kind of use and utilize and learn from the stories, and just, I suppose, continue to build on what we're trying to do here. I was looking at, we were trying to calculate the carbon footprint on this thing, and really, really tricky with a piece of print because there's so many processes involved in it. And I think anyone who's ever done a life cycle analysis on any physical production, the key learning for us was, you know, we were looking at things like the production of the actual print. Plus Print in Dublin produced the first one, Print Media Services Print the second, and they have lots of kind of sustainable processes and energy source in kind of how they operate. But one of the things we came across was that it was something like 75% of the carbon footprint for the piece was contained within the paper. So the actual sourcing of that and the production of paper and milling and transport is where the majority of actually the kind of the impact. It's bearing these things in mind, and knowledge when you're producing pieces is just key to everything. And just there's lots of places that you mightn't realize that you can have impact. Just those simple choices, they can all affect the I suppose positive outcome for a piece. Yeah, so that's it.